Oh, hello. Morbo the Annihilator here. Gruesome death awaits us all! Doom!
Hello all, Morbo here. Today we're going to start talking about map strategies. So as you can see by the graphic, the first map we're going to talk about is Denmark Strait. With Denmark Strait, you have two possibilities. You have it either with or without a capture point. So both those are going to be covered separately. So we're going to start by talking about without the capture point. Now, without a capture point, you're going to have to divide your fleet. Now, some people say one big fleet is better, or I suggest because this map is so spread out that we divide it into two fleets. So, as you can see, I've divided up Fleet 1 and Fleet 2. Fleet 1, 2 destroyers, 2 battleships. Fleet 2, 1 destroyer, 1 cruiser, 2 battleships. So, on this map, we have 3 destroyers and 4 battleships. Reason being, battleships give you a much better range. On this map, it's such a long distance and wide open. Now, I've also put it into 2 groups, and this way here, you can spread out with your 2 groups to try to find, but stick together so that you can find your targets and lay more fire into them. Now, with this, the destroyers have to stick close to the battleships and cruisers close to the battleships as well. This is a wide open map, so there is no capture point, so you don't have to worry about rushing to the middle. There's also the option, so some people like, is you can take an aircraft carrier or a sub. And with those, again, these ones are more separated and by themselves. So if you want to take an aircraft carrier and a sub, I suggest just replacing one from each fleet, but these ships basically go on their own. A aircraft carrier is more likely to sit in the back here away from everything else and just send its planes up front, where let's see, if aircraft carrier should sit back somewhere in one of these areas, where if you were to take a sub is going to want to go straight down towards their spawn point, of course, because you want to get as close to their battleships but avoid the thing, so you might have to take a long way around one way or the other. But this map is not great for subs because it is such a long map, and it takes a long time for a sub to get anywhere. Okay, so first thing I'm going to suggest is that with this map here, that we divide it into half. Okay, so if we divide this map basically straight through in half, we have, no matter which side, we're going to say we spawn on the top and the enemy is spawning on the bottom. So with this one, if we're spawning on the top, we want to divide into our 2 fleets, which of course you're going to have to determine before the battle even starts. Okay, now you don't want to go up past the halfway. The only time I would suggest that would be either the sub or the planes from the aircraft carrier, not the aircraft carrier itself. Now the reason being you want to do this is because if you start losing, say if one fleet lost or 2 destroyers, and so they didn't have eyes for the battleships, it's a shorter trip for the battleships to move backwards and for the destroyers to move forward into them. You want to pull the enemy into your area, not you go into theirs. Reason being, you don't want to rush headlong and not with the rest of your fleet and get yourself killed very, very easily. Okay, so with this, we're going to take Fleet 1 here, and we're going to say Fleet 1. Now, everybody always loves to rush to the middle, but we're not going to rush to the middle on this map. What we're going to do is we're going to take Fleet 1 and go within this area, and Fleet 2 is going to come down here and go within this area. 2 reasons for this. The first reason, of course, is that we're separated from the middle where we're possibly going to see them. We're going to stick over to the sides, and it's going to draw the enemy, which is typically going to come up the front, right in the middle first. Then they're going to have to separate and go one way or the other to attack us, where we've got them overlapped into crossfire. Because if these people come up this way, of course, if they keep coming, we now can fire at them from 2 separate sides. Okay, pitting them within the middle of our fire here. Now, when you were coming up from this, let me just go backwards here. Now, when we're coming up, what we want to do is we want to do a staggered approach. What that means is that we have 2 destroyers and 2 battleships, or a destroyer, a cruiser, and 2 battleships. So what we'll do is we'll take Fleet 1. Now, as Fleet 1 moves up here, you're going to have the destroyers up front, and then your battleships. But we always want to keep this range at a very, very small minimum. That will mean that the destroyers will go slower than normal. Destroyers can easily rush up to the halfway, and battleships still only be halfway there. But then, if ships are getting highlighted, say if we have our destroyers run up here, and all of a sudden these fleets start showing up here, they can start hitting these destroyers, but these battleships are still way out of range from here. So if we do a staggered approach, basically destroyer comes up and the battleship goes up, then the destroyer returns to the battleship and then comes back up again. And the destroyer's here and now the battleship's here. So then the destroyer comes back and goes back up again here, and our destroyers are now here and our battleships are now here. Always keeping this within a good short range. And again, we always want to come over to our spot. So for Fleet 1, I would recommend somewhere in the C4 to 5 area. So let me just get rid of some of this information, make it a little bit easier to see here. Oops. So I would recommend in the C4 to C5 area for Fleet 1. Fleet 2, we want down here, so I would recommend them be somewhere in the F8, F9, or even back to E8, E9, because the trip from here will take them the same down here, and like I said, you need to stagger your way down, stagger, stagger, stagger. Again, with destroyers, cruisers, and battleships, making sure that you're always constantly within a small group, I'd say 10 kilometers or less from each other, okay? Communication is key in this so that the destroyers can keep coming back and filling back up. Then say if we're down here, let's remove this. So say if we had a destroyer, a cruiser, and 2 battleships down here, what we could do is if we lost the destroyer, and of course the destroyer is going to reappear back up here, our battleship should start heading back up this way, and so should the cruiser. Mind you, you can easily go in reverse. It's like half speed in order to go back up here so the destroyer can come down here and meet you in time. That way there, if they have the destroyers over here, they'll have eyes on you and you can't have eyes on them. It's easy to stagger back here, and when doing that, we'll also drag them back over here to your area. Then, as a group, you come back down here, easily making them targets. Okay? This has been our first lesson where we cover up a non-capture point one. We're gonna do the capture point next. Okay, for the second part of our lesson, we're going to talk about the Denmark Strait, and we're going to talk about it with the capture point. The capture point, of course, shows up with a large green dot here, which appears usually in the center of the map. Sometimes it's off in a corner or on a side. Now, for this one, we've split up our fleet a little bit different. What we've done is we've divided into Fleet 1, which contains 3 destroyers and 3 battleships. Then we have Fleet 2, which is 2 separate cruisers. Again, you have the option of one of the other ships, such as the Tahoe or Type F, a submarine or an aircraft carrier, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. So what we want to do with this one is, of course, everybody knows they start up here. So what I suggest is Fleet 1 comes straight down here towards the circle. Okay, and with that, we can come straight towards the circle. And then what I suggest is for Fleet 2, 2 separate cruisers. I suggest 1 cruiser to one side, 1 cruiser down around to the other side. Now, with this, it gives us a couple different options. With this, of course, when you're coming down towards the circle, again, destroyers and battleships must stay together. They have to stagger their way down. So what we're going to do is as they come down, of course, we have destroyer and a battleship. So they're again going to stagger. I know it's going to take a little bit longer for the ships to get down here if we stagger our way down. of course, because the ships have to get to the circle. But it's going to take a little bit longer with them doing the staggering thing. But they appear at the same time. And when the destroyer highlights anybody in the circle, battleships are already within range and ready to do any damage to them. Okay, so what we'll do next is the fleet. Now, the reason why for Fleet 2, the cruisers, we want them to come over here to the outside. Reason being, typically these fleets, when they come up, the different guilds, of course, will always come towards the circle. So they'll always try to be around here. Now, they're trying to get either the destroyers that are inside the circle or the battleships that are outside the circle. With our destroyers sitting on the outside of the circle here, they're highlighting all of these ships. Cruisers with a good enough range, minimum 17, should be about 18, high 18 or maybe even 19, can easily hit any battleship that's sitting out over here around the outside of the circle and do damage. And what happens is when they start doing damage, these people don't want to take the damage. So they say if we have a cruiser here and it starts hitting a battleship, this battleship will try to pull back this way, taking it out of position, of course. And so it's both trying to move away from the cruiser who's trying to do it. Now, cruisers, you can almost say there's an imaginary line. Cruisers don't want to go too close down to the spawn point here or get within too close of range of all the ships here. Now, what's going to happen, of course, is if the battleship, say the battleship here is getting hit, it's, of course, going to come this way. And if it goes too far this way, it's in range of the other cruiser. Cruisers, of course, want to keep moving full speed, doing circles, whatever, going in and out, back and forth, trying to get within the range of it. Now, what you're going to do eventually is these people are now going to send a destroyer over here. Or maybe if they have another cruiser, they're going to send it over here as well, pulling them away from the circle and any support just to get the cruisers that are out here. Once they've taken that support away, the battleships who are sitting in here have a much easier time with the ships that are left in here, of course, making it easier for it to capture the circle. Or if you just want to go for the full, try to get as many kills as possible, it makes it easier for that as well. Now, this leaves both sides trying to concentrate on getting the circle. You don't have to concentrate on getting the circle. What you have to concentrate on is actually the other team not getting the circle. So if you can pull them back and pull them out of position here, it keeps them concentrating on one side, especially if one cruiser is doing it and then pulls back. If a cruiser comes in and there's a battleship here and it starts hitting it, so all of a sudden a destroyer and a battleship are coming over here away from the circle, the cruiser pulls back this way. Then this one starts doing the same thing, and it'll get these guys to try to go across the map to try to get to the cruiser on the other side, or back all the way around, where it's going to take them even longer because this is such a large map that the two cruisers can keep picking away at this. They don't have the firepower of a battleship, but they can get in and out and do damage constantly on the battleships and try to take them out, or on the destroyers and get them away from the circle as well. This strategy will work because what it does is it keeps our destroyers and our battleships just centered on the circle, and cruisers, like those little nasty flies that are around you when you're outside and you're swatting at them and can't get rid of them. That's what happens here. And eventually your attention gets caught by those and you get pulled out of whatever you were doing. So the exact same thing can happen here. Now, for a sub, of course, is going to come down. I would avoid the circle with the sub because all the destroyers are being here, and just come slightly around either side of the circle towards the battleships that are in the back. Or, of course, the aircraft carrier, which will sit back here somewhere around this way and just bring in its planes and knock off either the destroyers or the battleships that are sitting back here. Easy targets. People like to sit around circles, so they're not really moving that much, even though if you are in this circle, even if, say, we're on this side here, and these are our destroyers going around down here, and the battleships, you've got to constantly be moving. So a battleship on this side should be moving around this way, and a battleship on this side should be moving around this way, and back and forth, because it covers the entire thing. Now, if we're on a destroyer, and we come up to the circle, there's a couple of things here that we want to do. If we're on, say, we're on the top part of the map, and we come down, we want to basically take this entire section and divide it into 3. We should have a destroyer over here, beside or in and out of the circle as it's moving, constantly doing circles in and out. We want one over here doing the same thing, and we want one right at the top or in and out of the circle at the top. The reason why in and out of the circle, you're in the circle, they can't cap, vice versa. So you keep going back and forth in and out of the circle, dodging in and out, because you don't want to be sitting still. And of course, in a destroyer, you want to be laying mines. If you're laying them in the circle and they come in the circle, you know they're dead. Same with shooting as many torpedoes at their sections that are sitting down here. And the reason being that we split into three is that now the destroyer on this side is going to open up a whole big area for sight. The one on this side is a whole big area for sight, and the one in the middle will cover if either one of these go down. So of course, say if we have the destroyer on this side, let's take out some of this. So if we have the destroyer over here and it goes down, we have our destroyer here which can go over and cover until the destroyer here comes all the way back down to take his spot, and then he moves back over. And that still gives us ice over on this side and on this side, still covering the majority of the area. And this strategy has been tried, tested, and it works very, very well, especially on this map, which is very wide open. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and check back for more. Puny Human, Morbo now commands you. Click on the like button, and click on the subscribe button, or my race will come and conquer you.